Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Pastor Tim Westermeyer, Senior Pastor of St. Philip the Deacon, which is privileged to host these wonderful community events called the Faith and Life Lecture Series. We're in the middle of our 23rd season of events, so a special welcome to all of you who are here in the hall. I also want to be sure to welcome those of you joining us digitally tonight. One question I like to ask at the front end of a night like this, and I can't see those of you who are at home, of course, but for those of you who are here, how many of you are here for the first time? Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. This is a bit of a niche kind of topic tonight, and I had a feeling we'd have some niche-y attendees, so special welcome to all of you. We're very glad you're here. As I mentioned, this is the 23rd year of this series, and what this series does is it brings in people from all walks of life, and has done now for, again, 23 years, who are Christian, who are willing to talk a little bit about how their faith informs whatever it is they do. So we've had professors, we've had authors, we've had journalists, we've had scientists, we've had historians, we have had some theologians, not many, and on and on and on, nonprofit leaders, for-profit executives, and so forth. I'll say a word about our speaker tonight. Before I do, just a word about the flow of the evening. She will come up and talk for 40 minutes or so. After that, there will be a chance for some question and answers. So if you're here in the sanctuary, I would encourage you at that point, I'll come back up and invite you to do this. Don't do it while she's talking, obviously. But you can go to a mic to my right or to my left to ask a question. If you are watching at home, you can either type a question into, there should be a box below where you're streaming this that invites a question, or you can email a question to social, that's S-O-C-I-A-L, social at spdlc.org. And at the Q&A time, those questions will be forwarded to me, and I will try to include them along with whatever questions those of you who are in the hall may have. I mentioned sort of the breadth of speakers that we've had for 23 years now. One of the areas, I guess, that we've actually had a little bit of a concentration of over those 2.5 decades is people who are in athletics or sports. And I was reflecting on it actually before this evening. We've had coaches and players from the NFL. We've had players from Major League Baseball. We've had a coach from the NBA. We've also had professional golfers. In fact, Hillary Lunke, I don't know if any of you know that name, is a Edina-born professional LPGA player who went to Stanford, as did our guest tonight. We have never, let's see if I missed anyone, PGA, MLB, NFL, yeah, that's it. We have never had a long-distance runner. Shocking, I know. I can't imagine how we missed that. And so tonight we're delighted to have someone, I actually asked our speaker tonight, I always ask this, if she had any kind of unusual or quirky or funny things that aren't on her bio, and she sort of said, not really. So she's just the plain vanilla third fastest woman in America. She has her fastest marathon, I think I've got this right, is 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 32 seconds, which is a lot faster than I can run it, I promise you that. She's married to Ryan Hall, who's an Olympic marathoner. Together, by the way, they formed, you may know this, something called the Hall Steps Foundation, which does a lot of good work in Ethiopia. They actually together have adopted 4 biological sisters, all from Ethiopia, which is a beautiful testament to how she and Ryan are living their faith out. She's going to Quito, Ecuador to do some training in a little bit after this. She'll be running in the Boston Marathon in a month, and she just got back on Sunday from running in a marathon in Tokyo, Japan. So, will you help me welcome Sara Hall?
Hi, it's so nice to be here with you guys. I love coming to Minnesota. I've been here multiple times to race the Twin Cities 10 mile and the road mile back in my mile days. And every time I come to Minnesota, I think about moving here. I'm like, everyone is so nice, and like, I love the lakes. Like, I just ran around Medicine Lake before this, and yeah, I don't know. There's just something about being here that I just think of that. So you guys are lucky. How many runners do we have in the house tonight? Wow, that's a lot. We got some Boston jackets here. How many people only run if someone's chasing you? A couple, yeah. Well, I just want to share a little bit about my running journey tonight and just like how I experienced God along the way. And I hope that it speaks to you guys somehow. I just grew up just loving running. I was just one of those people that I started with soccer and basketball and knew I had speed from that. But as soon as I had the ability to start training for cross country in 7th grade, I just loved the ability to like explore in the trails and just have freedom at an age where you don't really get a lot of freedom. I grew up in Northern California and across the street from this giant state park, and I couldn't drive or I couldn't really like do anything on my own, but my parents let me go across the street and run, and I just kept wanting to get like further and further into the trails, and sometimes like would just intentionally go get lost just so I could like find new trails on my way home, and got up to like running like 16 miles when I was 13 years old, and just loved it. And at first, running was just all upside to me. Like, I won the state championship as a freshman in high school in cross country, and then also in the mile and 2 mile in track, which in California we run like all the divisions together. So I was like the fastest runner in the state, like in my very first year of high school. And I just kind of went into races like just really naively and just kind of just send it with like no fear at all out there, and that was really fun, and I had a lot of success. And then somewhere along the line, it was like my second year of high school, all of a sudden I stumbled upon these anonymous message boards online and just started reading stuff about myself on there. Like I'd failed recently at a race and just read people kind of tearing me apart on there. And this was pre-social media. So at the time, that was like a really new thing for me to experience like online criticism. And in that moment, just this like seed entered my heart of like, through failure, I can lose what a 14-year-old girl really wants most at the time. It's like love and belonging. And all of a sudden, I realized like, all that was on the line every time out when I raced. And it just really started this fear of failure in my life that would continue on. And I did continue to have success in high school, like although I was lining up with less excitement or like less freedom to just go send it out there. It was more, I really hope I don't fail, And then, same as in college, just really struggled with that fear of failure. And but I still did have success in college at Stanford, met my husband there, Ryan. And actually, I'd actually met Ryan back in high school. We were both like state champions in California. And when at the state championship, we were both kind of off in this park wanting to just get away from the crowds a little bit, like get our mind on for the next race. And we chatted a little bit about our race. And as he walked away, I heard God say, like, that's the man you're gonna marry. And it was the first time, it wasn't an audible voice. It was, as many of you know, like a lot of times God's voice is like, comes from within you. But it's like something that you wouldn't have said to yourself, or like something that, you just have a sense that like that was God speaking to you. And so that really took me by surprise. I did not see that coming. And so I definitely had my eye on him when we went to Stanford, and we dated all 4 years there, and it was very linear, and got married after Stanford. And my performances at Stanford, they were, despite struggling with the fear of failure, like they went well enough that I had the opportunity to go pro as a runner, and I really wrestled with whether I wanted to do that. Like that was never my dream, to be a professional athlete. I loved competing and I loved running, but really like what made me come alive most was helping the poor. And like I always envisioned myself living in like a mud hut in Africa, just like devoting my life to bringing justice to areas of extreme poverty. And that really started actually back in high school, taking trips to Mexico with my youth group from my church. And there was some, I don't think we really did that much to help on those trips necessarily, but what it did in my heart was it exposed me to like poverty outside the U.S. borders in a way that just like really marked my life, where I knew like one day I would wanted to do something to help people like living in extreme poverty, and I would devote my life to that. And so yeah, as college kind of rounded out my senior year, I wrestled with this, like, running feels selfish, like, I don't know if this is really, I always heard in church, like, ministry was, serving people, like it was being a pastor, or it was serving in the church. Like, to me, that's what ministry looked like. That's what doing things for God that were significant looked like. And so I kind of pictured, doing that for my career, or my path. And running kind of seemed self-indulgent. It seemed like this really self-centered thing where you have to really dial in your sleep and your nutrition and your training and everything. And so as I was praying about it, I felt like God told me, you can do more through your running for these areas that you care about than with your own two hands, if you were to just be over there working in this area. And so I didn't really know how that could happen, but I just believed that would happen. And so I decided to go pro. I got an agent, and he ended up finding me a shoe sponsor, which is how we pro runners make our livelihood primarily. And then Ryan ended up going pro as well, signing with the same shoe sponsor, and we got engaged. And all of a sudden, like, our lives were just, we were doing this. We were off to Europe to do more track racing and becoming professional athletes. But yeah, I still, my early years of being a professional athlete, I really struggled with, like, is this something that can help people through my running? And has anyone seen Chariots of Fire in here? Okay, so it's like that's some homework. Not a lot of people. That was one of my favorite movies growing up, and it's a running movie. It's a true story about Eric Liddell, who he won the Olympic 400 meters. I can't remember the year, but his dream was always to be a missionary, and his sister is kind of arguing with him. She's like, why are you doing this running thing? Like, this is not, you're called to be a missionary. You need to, like, come on the missions field. And he's like, God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. And there's something about running where, like, I could relate to that. Like, I felt God's pleasure as I ran, but I also had that part of me, like Eric Liddell, that was like, maybe I should be on the missions field. So I really struggled with that early as a pro, and simultaneously, Ryan's career just took off. He started setting American records. In his very first half marathon, he ran an American record, and then he started competing up front in the major marathons, which was really uncommon at the time for U.S. runners to be doing that. And he was, like, living his dream. Ryan's dream was always to be a professional runner. And so all of a sudden, I was, like, stuck doing this thing that I didn't really envision for myself. I was starting to struggle myself in my performances. I wasn't very happy living up in this small mountain town that we were living in. For the altitude training is why we were there, for distance running, and it was really secluded. It was a town of 7,000 people, like, buried in the mountains, and all of a sudden I was like, this is not, what I dreamed of for my life. And on top of that, I was wanting to have these big performances like Ryan was having, and trying extra hard to like do what I needed to do to have those, but I just wasn't able to have that same success, and instead I was failing a lot. And so yeah, for the first time I felt really stuck in life, and I felt like God in that moment was telling me, you can find a way to thrive, like, right where you're at here. And so I wasn't sure how that was, but I continued to fail more and more. And in 2009, I placed last in the U.S. Nationals in the 5,000. And that was the lowest point. Like, here I am, a professional athlete, like, being paid to perform. And all of a sudden, I'm getting last place in this race. Like, when, my job is to win, it's to perform. And, but really, I'm so thankful, honestly, for all those failures and getting to that point, because I got so desperate for God in that place that it led me to seek out just a different lifestyle. I plugged in more to my church where I was at in Mammoth Lakes, and they were having a school of ministry there, and I just signed up. I was like I need something right now, like to take my mind off of running and like to go deeper in God and just to like have a more well-rounded lifestyle, because my life was so centered around running and competing and nutrition and all of that, which wasn't like what I envisioned for my life. And God really met me in that school. The very first day of school, a speaker came, and his name was Joaquin Evans, and he was talking about Matthew 11:30, where Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." And he's like, if you're feeling heaviness right now, that's because you just have to say, sorry, Jesus, I picked up the wrong yoke, and just put it back, And he's just like, ha, ha, ha. He was just so like joyful and just peaceful. And I was like, I'm feeling heaviness. Like I'm feeling like, and I was like wondering like, what would it take to like lay this down, like to surrender it, And he went around and prayed for us that day. And like that day I felt God's Spirit come on me so strong that I actually like didn't get up off the floor for a number of hours. And during that time, like God, I feel like he just spoke to me of a lot of the disappointments I was going through, that he'd always been there. And really just, it was really exciting just to experience a touch from God in a tangible way. Like I'd always wanted that since I was a young kid. Like I'd always known there was more to the spiritual world than I was experiencing. And sometimes, as a kid, I would even like hike up a mountain and with like a notebook and say to God, like, I'm not leaving until you speak to me, And then like a few hours later, I'd get bored and like walk back down with an empty notebook, But no matter how many times something like that would happen, like my love for God always outweighed any doubts I had about him. Like I just knew God was real. Like I just knew in like my heart that it was true. And but to actually experience him was like a really, really powerful moment. And I think it really took getting to this place of desperation just to finally surrender, to feel that. And another moment like that happened. I soon after that, I had an Achilles tendon injury that was really bad, and that can be really career-ending. And so I was really worried about that. And I had some people pray for me, and God healed my injury like instantaneously. And I went out and went straight into hard training right after that. But beyond the healing, it was as they were praying, this woman said, Jesus just wants you to know, like, he just delights so much in watching you run. Like, it doesn't matter how fast or what place you get. Like, he just delights in you so much. And it sounds maybe like just, of course, but that was like revolutionary to me in that moment. Having experienced so much failure in what I was doing in a sport where you're judged by your results. Like it's just you out there and people are judging your every movement. The result sheet shows exactly how successful you are. And honestly, people's love often is conditional, right? It's like you get, like Ryan was getting treated really differently than I was getting treated because he was so successful, and you feel that. But just to, and even like my parents like loved me really well and really, really well. But like there are times I could tell they were distressed by my failures, or sometimes they'd be like, I don't think you gave your best effort out there, So to just picture a loving father just so delighting in me just for being me, like no matter how I performed, was really healing to me. And I got up from that experience like a different person. It healed that fear of failure in me, that all of a sudden my identity was more secure. Like I was worthy of love and belonging no matter what. Like no matter how many, if I failed every other race I ran after that, I was still worthy of that. And that God loved me unconditionally. There's this really great song. It's called Inheritance. You can look it up on YouTube or on Apple Music, but it has Graham Cook talking on there, and he says, the Lord God wants you to know that there's nothing you can do that would make him love you more. There's also nothing you can do that would make him love you less. He loves you because he loves you, because he loves you, because he loves you, because he loves you. And he goes on, and he's like, because that is what he is like. It's his nature to love. And I think that just shifted everything for me, that like, he loves you because he loves you, and it's not about performance. And I realized I had been trying to perform for God since I was young. Like, I was naturally wired for performance. That's why I ended up in the career I did, you know? And I thought it was coming from a good place of like wanting to serve God, wanting to do good things for God, to please him. And that was really like a big emphasis in my spiritual tradition growing up, was like doing things to please God. And really that just translated to doing things to please people too, right? To continue to be successful, to feed that like, that desire in you, that to be good enough for God, to be good enough for other people. And this really just started to break that in me, where I started to realize like, I don't need to perform like for love, either from God or from other people. And once I got that rooted in me, I started to like be less afraid to fail when I lined up at a race. And then the races started going better, and it started snowballing everything the other way, where all of a sudden I could take risks, which meant I ended up having good races, because if you're afraid to fail, you'll never reach your potential in whatever you're doing. So I started to have some success, and it started to just be fun again. I won the U.S. cross country national championship, and I just started to enjoy competing, and like the fun and just like when I was a kid again, it just started the childlikeness came back of competing. And every year up till even now, like right now I'm running 5 marathons in 6 months, which is like really not usually done. Like usually people on the elite level do 2 marathons a year, fall and spring. But I'm like, let's just try it. Like there's nothing to lose. Like nothing to lose, nothing to prove. Just go do it. And that's what's so beautiful about life with God, when you get his love just so deeply rooted in you that it's almost like you can't fail, you know? So let's see. So then, continued to just love competing, still was out there much longer than I thought doing this career, when I thought I was going to be headed to the missions field. And all of a sudden, Ryan started really struggling. You know, he ran amazingly in so many marathons, multiple Olympic teams, but his body started to really break down. And once he decided he was done, he wanted kids like yesterday. And we had always wanted to adopt. I grew up with a lot of adopted cousins, and that was always kind of my plan A for having a family. And so we started looking into different options of adoption. And I'd always, like, my sister does malaria research, and she's lived a number of different countries in Africa. And being over there, you just see like the orphan crisis, and it just like breaks your heart. And I'd been in orphanages in Uganda and Senegal, and so I really felt like I wanted to adopt from Africa, and Ethiopia at the time was the country with probably the best, healthiest adoption program, and we already had a connection to Ethiopia through distance running, because Kenya and Ethiopia are the most dominant in distance running. And so we started to pursue an adoption of just a baby girl from Ethiopia. And we figured we should just start with, we knew the need was with older kids, but we just felt like we didn't know what we were doing. We weren't parents, and so we should probably start with a baby. And so as we got in the process, we realized that, the need really was with kids 3 and older. And we took a training trip to Ethiopia. And when we were out there, we visited our agency's transition home, and we just loved all the older kids there. We were like, we would adopt any one of these kids. They're amazing. And so we actually met a little girl there that day that they'd been looking for a home for. And Ryan and I just both felt really drawn to her. And we emailed our agency, and they said, well, you know what? We had been looking for a home for her for like months now, but a family just asked to review her file. And so we were so bummed. We were like, oh man, it just seemed like we were both just like really drawn to her. She was 9 years old. And yeah, she was kind of like caretaking. Most of the other kids are just babies or really little kids, because that's mostly what people end up adopting. And she was kind of like the caretaker for all of them. But yeah, so but then the next day we woke up, we were in Ethiopia still, and they emailed and they said, you know, the family prayed, they didn't feel like this little girl was right, like for their family. They didn't feel peace about it. So they prayed that God would have like another family step up if that was the case. And that was right, like when you emailed. And so we were like, oh my gosh, this is meant to be, and like just got so excited. And long story short, as we got along in the process, we found out that she actually, her mother, so her father had passed, but her mother thought the only way for her to be adopted was to like fake her death certificate. And so she was really struggling to survive, just selling like bread and tea at the market every day. And she wanted her to have a better life, often like here in the US would happen. But she, instead of like relinquishing her as would be like the route, she like faked a death certificate, and actually she was alive. So it falsified her paperwork, and it made it so that she was no longer able to be adopted. And it was really tough. She was never our daughter, but it felt like what a miscarriage I'd imagine would feel like, where you just had imagined things being a certain way. And then you start to worry too about her and her future now that she wouldn't be able to be adopted, and also her family couldn't afford to take care of her. And so it was really confusing, but then what it did do was it opened Ryan and my hearts to adopting older kids. And soon after that, we received, in a Facebook group, we saw a photo of our 4 daughters, and they at the time were 3 up to 13 years old. And there's 4 biological sisters, and I'm staring at this picture of them, and I'm trying to like see if I feel a connection with these like kids, you know? It's this grainy photo, and they're in these kind of tattered green dresses, and they're not smiling, and I was just trying to wrap my head around like if that could even be possible. And my husband, we're both very impulsive, but Ryan is like even more. So I feel like I have to be the voice of reason, you know? And he's like, let's do it. Like as soon as he heard about them. And so then I felt like I had to be like, I don't know. We have no idea. Like we don't even know how to be parents. Like we have no idea what, these kids have obviously been through extreme trauma, and I was actually starting to really enjoy competing at that point. Like I was having more and more success, and I'd worked incredibly hard for 10 years to get to that point of having a lot of success. So yeah, I really wrestled with it. And in the end, I was like, let's go meet them and just get a feel for like how open their hearts are. And, as much as like my original vision for myself was to be selfless and living in Africa, like I was used to my professional athlete lifestyle and my freedom. And I was a little worried about giving that up. But yeah, we ended up going out there, and the kids didn't know that's why we were there. We just were playing with everyone at the orphanage, but obviously like keeping our eye on them. And then every night we would kind of go home and hash it out together. Like, how are you feeling about this? And Ryan, of course, was all in every single night. And then I was the one that was like, I don't know. Not that there was anything about them necessarily. It was more like, I don't know about myself. Like, I don't know if I have what they need to be their mom. I'm not even a mom yet, and I don't know what we're gonna face, adopting 4 kids that have been through really traumatic experiences. And so the final kind of night we were there, we were talking about it, and Ryan said, I just can't think of any reason to say no that isn't based in fear. And in that moment, like, it just hit me where I was like, yeah, like we're going to choose love over fear in this case. And I really wanted to have like a clear word from the Lord, like I did when it came to Ryan, right? That was like really easy, but I didn't have that. It just felt like jumping off a cliff and just saying yes, you know? And I just want to point that out because it's like sometimes walking with God looks like the clear word, and sometimes it looks like the light is green unless it's red, you know? Like, and in this case, I didn't feel a red light from God. It just seemed like, okay, like you can choose this. Like if you want, like you can go down this path, and it's okay if you don't, you know? But yeah, we said yes to our kids, and it was about 8 months of going back and forth, just getting to know them in Ethiopia. We were able to bring them home and finish the process. And I love, through that process of just spending every other month over there, I just fell in love with training in Ethiopia. It's at 9,000 feet elevation, and yeah, the best runners in the world, a lot of them are training there. And so it's just such an adventure, as well as just getting to know our girls on their turf. Like they didn't speak any English. They'd never been to school. So by the time she came home, my oldest daughter was 15. Yeah, didn't speak English and never been to school. And so, yeah, I have a book coming out in April. Then there's a lot of funny stories of what it was like bringing them to this kind of like alien planet in the U.S. eventually. But we managed to keep everyone alive, and they're all doing really well today. But yeah, I just thought that once I became a mom, I would stop running. Like my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Ryan's mom was a stay-at-home mom. My mom really drilled into us like being a stay-at-home mom is like the highest calling, you know. And so I just assumed that was what I would do. But I still had this like love for competing, and I still just really loved the process of what I was doing. And I also started to expand my mind of what ministry looks like. I no longer thought of it just as between the four walls of the church or just serving God in this tangible way that's like spiritual things, you know? And I started to see what I was doing as spiritual. Like everything can be spiritual, you know, when it's done with a heart to love God through it, to like do it all unto the Lord and to love other people through it. And I think, yeah, it always helped too to hear how you're impacting other people, other runners, or like what you've done that inspires them. And I began to just see kind of the ripple effect of it too, as well as starting our charity, the Hall Steps Foundation, which was engaging the running community to help orphan children. Now it's orphan children in Ethiopia. And back then, at the time, we built a hospital in Kenya. We brought clean water to different areas of Africa. And again, like the vision I had of my youth of bringing justice to these areas, and it really fulfilled that word God gave me back when I was debating if I was going to go pro or not, that I could do more through my running. And so yeah, I just want to encourage that for you guys too, that like maybe your dream for your life looks different than you thought it would, but you can have the same impact in the things that God puts on your heart. Like what is your heart burn for that the world needs? You know, what needs in the world? Like for me, it's like it just bothers me that people don't have enough food or don't have clean water. Like that there's 60,000 kids living on the streets in the capital city of Addis Ababa alone, you know? And so it's like, what are those things that like just bother you, you know? But then the route that you go to impact those might look different than you thought it could. You know, maybe it's the ability to create wealth here in the US and then give it to like really worthy causes, or maybe it's like praying for the people that are doing that work. But yeah, it was, so all that to say, the girls came home and I decided I was gonna keep running. I was gonna keep doing this and just see how everyone handled it and adjust. It was kind of like how we approached everything, including throwing them into school, even though they'd never been to school and they didn't speak English. We're like, let's just throw them in there and like see how it goes. And we can always, you know, homeschool if we need to, but hopefully not, because that sounds really hard. But yeah, that's kind of the approach I took to my running too. Like, I'm just gonna see if I can handle it. And I started to just continue to improve in the marathon each year. I just took like 1 minute off per marathon. 227, 230, 228, 227, 226, just chipping away, just finding ways to just do my craft a little better and just enjoy the process more. And I got to the point that I was actually in contention to run an American record. And that was a huge process compared to when I was placing last place at the U.S. Nationals. And there was just a real tug of war in myself because I loved what I did. I loved training. I wanted to like give all of myself to it, like Ryan got to when he was in his career. But as many of you know, when you're a parent, like your life is not your own anymore, you know. And I actually struggled with some really long. Well, first, before that, I had like an amazing breakthrough race at the London Marathon where I got second place, which is like one of the most prestigious marathons in the world. And soon after that, went into like a really long COVID type struggling. And really during that time, I was really wrestling with like just wanting to rest more, like hide in my room and like watch Netflix and like not have to like spell anything, you know? Like, cause your kids are always like, I don't know, they're just always asking you things all the time. But there was another moment around this time where I just experienced God in like a really strong way that really like reshifted my mindset and priorities, where I realized like life is all about love and like relationships in a way that sounds cliche, but it just hit me in a deeper way, where I realized like so at the time I was training for the American record in the half marathon, and I came out of that experience, which was like a really heavy moment with God, where I was like, I'm only going to chase this to the level that I can still show up well for the people in my life. And that's what I did. I decided I'd put that goal off the table, because I was like, this is pulling me out of the present. It's making me a worse mom and worse spouse, like worse friend. Like, I don't want to have any goal in my life that is making me that way. And so we decided we would take the goal and table it, and instead choose to have the goal be enjoying like the feeling of being out there. And Ryan's like, that's like what you love about this sport, is like the feeling of flying along and like clicking off splits and just like chasing down people, like just focus on that. But the beautiful thing is, in the end, like I focused on, I laid the goal down for a while, and I focused on that in the race. But in the end, I did set the American record in the half marathon. And it was 15 years at the exact same race since Ryan set the half marathon American record way back in 2007. And it just showed me how sometimes with God, like, we lay things down, and then like he ends up giving them back to us. You know, it's that process of surrender, like I talked about earlier. And sometimes it's like he wants just that process of the surrender, and like that's what changes us. And it was just like, it couldn't have shown more the difference between Ryan and my career. Like, he knocked it out of the park. His very first half marathon, set an American record in this place. And then it took me 15 years of just persevering, like overcoming and all these things to finally to get to that point myself. And yeah, and it was just such a special moment. And but it also just taught me that there's nothing more important than loving people well. And as much as I love what I do and I want to go after it with everything in me and like do it with excellence, like I'm not willing to sacrifice like loving God and loving other people in the process. 1 Corinthians 13:2 says, if I don't have love, I have nothing. And you know, what I found is pro athletes are not always like the happiest people, you know? We're all in on these goals, And everything filters through that of like, am I going to go to my friend's wedding? Am I going to help my daughter with her homework? Like, am I going to help my neighbor with this? Like, it filters through, but what about my long run tomorrow? But what about this race coming up, And that's, as I mentioned, like the battle I've always had with this sport and the amount of focusing on yourself that it does require, that is a part of it. But also God calls us to be selfless. And I think, honestly, I feel like of Christianity, like that's the biggest fruit of it in my life is instilling in me a desire to be selfless. And I think when I think about my kids and like why I want them to know Jesus and read the Bible, it's things like that you won't get outside of that, I feel like. And so anyways, I feel like as a pro athlete, it's like you're constantly chasing the mist. It's like you achieve something and it's never quite good enough. It's never quite what you imagined it would feel like. And so you're like chasing the next thing, And it just leaves you constantly like a little, not satisfied, not happy and fulfilled. But it's really like in loving God and loving other people that we get that fulfillment. Matthew 16:26 says, "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" And a lot of times as pro athletes, we do almost get the whole world, right? You have like the wealth and the fame and like, whatever you want, you can go wherever you want, with power. And, but like people find in those times, like it doesn't matter, right? Like it's your spiritual life, like in your soul that really brings that fulfillment. So I guess all that to say, I hope to inspire you guys tonight that ministry can look a lot of different ways. Like it can look like doing what you love and what makes you come alive with a heart to serve God and to serve others and to meet a world need that like burns in your heart. And that's something that running has taught me, and I continue to strive to do that for. And and the journey just never ends with God. And that's what the exciting thing is like, there's just always new levels with him. And there's always just so much grace of just like knowing his love he loves you because he loves you because he loves you. And when you get that rooted, it's like you can't fail with him, and you get to just go after things with like freedom that he's with you, and that loving him and loving other people is the most important part through it all. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for that. She's going to rest her voice for a second. And after I make a couple of announcements, as I mentioned, you'll have a chance to ask some questions. If you're here in the sanctuary, again, you can go to one of the mics, and again, at home, type your question into the box or send an email to social@spdlc.org. The couple of announcements I will make are, first of all, a reminder of our next event. Again, this is the third of 5 events for this year's season. The next one will feature a gentleman named Lee C. Camp, who comes out of Nashville. He does a lot of different things, but he is, among other things, a host of a podcast called No Small Endeavor. That date was originally set for February, and it instead, because he lives in Nashville and they had some terrible weather, there were some complications. So again, if you saw a different date, I'm telling you now in your program, the correct date is March 26th. So that's a Thursday, a couple weeks out from now. So join us for that. We'll conclude the series then in April with Francis Collins. Francis Collins is genuinely one of the world's foremost experts on the intersection of faith and science. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. If you would like to get reminders about upcoming events, obviously you can follow us on social media. If you go to the Faith and Life website, you can also subscribe to emails that we send out about upcoming events. By the way, I'm going to plug something. which I almost never do, because I started the series 23 years ago. I feel very strongly that the Faith and Life series is a pure gift to the community. It is not a bait and switch. If you've never been here before and you never come again, that's just fine. We happen to be an amazing church, and if you want to come back, that's fine too. But everything you were talking about, Sarah, and I love Chariots of Fire. I love the quote of Eric Liddell that when I run, I feel God's pleasure. I just love that whole idea. And one way of reframing everything you just said is that each of us is called. I absolutely believe that, to do something. And you're right, ministry doesn't mean within the church necessarily. It might in some cases. But each of us is called to do something else. And if you want to hear me prattle on about that, this is the thing I'm plugging. Tomorrow, a podcast episode of mine will come out, really almost identical to that, but viewed through the lens of not a runner, but of a cellist named Yo-Yo Ma. Has anyone heard of Yo-Yo Ma? Was anyone here, by the way? He just played at Orchestra Hall I had the great privilege of hearing him play and talk about someone who was born to do something and who just exudes joy while he's playing. So I reflect on that in my podcast. If you're interested, you can find it on YouTube at Reflections on Faith. Like and subscribe, as they say. It hasn't broken the internet yet, but maybe after tonight it will. We'll see. Anyway, so sign up for emails and stuff if you want to hear about Faith and Life events. Final thing I'll say is just a word of thanks. Again, in your program, if you're here tonight, you will see the names of countless people who make this series possible. I've said this from the beginning. This series, while it's a community service of this congregation, it is not actually part of the budget of the church. So everything that's related to this series is sponsored entirely by it's not by the shoes I wear in the case of someone like Sarah. We have to fundraise every year to make it possible to bring people like Sarah in. And I am so, so grateful, and I've been grateful for 2.5 decades for all the individuals and corporations who support this series. I'm obviously not going to read all of these names, but I will mention our corporate sponsors, Crossroads Financial Group, Savills, Malley Design, Rotation Engineering, Bay Creek Dental, Mastercraft Labels, Productivity Inc., Rapid Packaging, and the Valuation Group. Many of those individuals are either here tonight or watching online. Again, I'm profoundly grateful to everyone who makes this possible. Will you join me in thanking them for allowing us to bring people like Sarah here? And then a similar line of thanks to Jeff. Where are you, Jeff? Jeff Elstead, a wonderful guitarist who plays music before and after. Thank you, Jeff, for your music. Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Sarah. So if you want to come back up and make sure your mic's on. And again, if you've got questions here, come to one of the mics and I'll see what we've got from online viewers. The first question's always the hardest, so someone.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing. I wrote down one of your quotes. I don't have it memorized. This is late for me. I run at 3 a.m. What is it your heart burns for that the world needs? Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. I was just curious how your faith has been used with the other elites during races, especially when races don't go so well and you're trying to be a light. How is maybe an example how you've been able to share that on the pro field?
Yeah, I think it's evolved. I think in high school, I felt like my job, running, I wanted to be successful to have a platform to share about Jesus with people. And I felt like but then the flip side of that was if I wasn't winning, I was like, what's the point of me doing this? And so I think now I feel like it comes more out of relationship, honestly. I think it's genuinely loving people and not having any kind of agenda, just loving them to love them. And I think there's moments where you can feel like from competitors when they're really for you. And it's tricky, right? Because you're like competing. And so, a lot of people, the way that they want to approach competition is like to just not like people, like to get really like, because that can work, But I think it can be kind of countercultural to like genuinely be really happy for people, like, and actually be happy for them. And I don't know. I would say I'm not perfect at it at all. Like, I'm a really competitive person, but I think I've tried to just really like be an encourager and I think like offer to share like knowledge or share like experiences and things with people the most I can. But yeah, I think it really comes down to like, just finding ways to like genuinely love people,
All right, I do have 2 or 3 so far from online. The first one is, could you talk about how your own family or parents supported your athletics and also how they supported your faith development?
Yeah, my parents did an amazing job with both, and it was interesting because I was kind of similar with both my running and faith. They were very letting it come from me. But also supporting me with like what I needed for those things. So I think I grew up in a very Christian home where, Santa was an assault on Christmas. And I don't know, does anyone else have homes like that? And Xmas was even worse, so it was definitely like very, and we always went to church. Like when I started playing traveling soccer, they were really worried because a lot of times it was on Sunday. But as far as like my own walk with God, like they let it kind of come from me, and they didn't push me to like do certain things. And then same with my running, they actually like held me back more than they pushed me to run. And I think it really allowed me to like find my own fire. And I think what you see is a lot of times when kids are pushed by their parents, like they don't typically have the longevity in that sport. Whereas the ones that like it comes from them, they do. Like I don't know, something about that, like they don't rebel against it later when they're out of the house or something. And so I feel really grateful that they definitely like prioritize faith. They prioritize giving your best in sports and stuff, but they didn't push me on like the day-to-day like effort of things and stuff. Yeah.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
So my name is Elizabeth Neville, and I am actually a runner in the Special Olympics 2026 USA Games coming up this June.
Awesome.
And my question is that, do you have any motivation or faith of words you would like to give my team?
Ooh. That's a really good question. Yeah. Well, good luck, first of all. That's really exciting. I would say that some of my favorite mantras to say when I'm running are relax and roll and the well is deep. Like even when you're hurting, you can keep hurting. You can like keep going to the well. So that motivates me to like, a lot of times we feel pain and we kind of want to back off, or it's like our brain is telling us like, you're gonna die, slow down, But a lot of running is like overriding those signals in your brain. So a lot of times I tell myself like, it's just pain, But and like it's, you're not gonna die, it's just pain. But I would say the biggest one I would give them is this image of a sled dog. So I went on a sled dog trip in Norway once, and you walk out there and all the dogs just start going crazy, like wanting to be the ones like picked to pull the sled and do what they've trained to do and like what they were created to do, which is like just run and work. And anytime we were actually out there on the sled and you stop for any reason, they turn around, they start like whining and like barking at you. Like they just like love to run. And I was like, that's like how I want to be on the starting line, like no, not being like nervous or like, oh, what if I fail? Or maybe I'll twist my ankle before the race and I won't have to get out there, like those kind of like nervous feelings. instead being like, yeah, like put me in, like I want to be the one to run and like just the joy of running. So I hope you can think of the sled dog out there.
Thank you, and good luck on your marathons.
Thank you.
Good luck. I'm so excited to watch. So you said choose love over fear, and that convicted me, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story and for being here and just shining bright. Like, you're such a light when you speak. But my question is, when you have moments of fear creep in, is that something that happens often? And when those moments do come back, it's like, what's the first thing that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I like to. Well, I was talking to my daughter the other day. She's always stressed about school, despite the fact that I'm like, stop studying, watch TV with me. Like we're not the like overbearing school parents. But I was asking her, I was like, what's at the root of this stress? Or like, what is the fear you're believing about that is causing you to be stressed about school? And there's always like a lie that's at the root of it, And so I think I tend to go for that, as well as like ask myself, like my pastor once said, like, where, when you lose your peace, like you ask yourself, like, where did I lose it? Like, go back to where that, and it's like, oh, it was here where this person said this, and it made me like think I might lose relationship with them if I don't, perform or like whatever it is. And so I think just tracing it back a little bit is helpful, as well as like realizing a lot of fear is our ego protection. So for me, I'm trying to, I think Christianity and our life with God is all about transcending the ego, really, and I think but the ego wants to protect itself. And so I think for me, I just really failed big time in a race on Sunday, and you start feeling that shame cycle come on and stuff, and then it really helps me just to take a step back and be like, okay, this is just my ego, like it's like wanting me to be safe and like it's survival and stuff, but really like I'm loved, like I'm safe, I'm good, and so yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's another one from online. You mentioned before adopting your children, you said this a few times, that you weren't a mom, you didn't know how to be a mom, you weren't quite sure what to expect. So what has being a mom of 4 children taught you?
Oh gosh, so much. And I would say, first of all, for people that are moms or gonna be moms, like to give you freedom to be the type of mom you are. Like I am really different than my mom. Like I thought I was gonna be like her. Like I would start wearing like mom clothes, like turtlenecks, and like be really like cutesy and like love like preschool stuff and stuff. But like I like rap. Like I like rapping with my kids. Like we like wear the same crop tops. Like I don't know. So I think like I think, yeah, just being yourself, like, and Ryan always would encourage me, like, you're the mom they need, like God chose you to be their mom, and like they're all girls, like, so that was kind of fun. But my kids have taught me so much. I mean, they're incredibly overcomers in every way with what they've overcome. My oldest daughter has a severe learning disability, as well as didn't speak English, didn't ever go to school, and she graduated from college, which is incredible. And they've given me a lot of grace to like figure out the balance I talked about with pursuing this career and showing up for them, and I haven't always gotten that right. But they really accepted me as mom from like day one, and like that was really like, I feel like I struggled with attachment more than they did almost, and I think they've really shown me the power of like their yes for like towards me, like just you're my mom, okay, like accepting that, and like how powerful that is, and how we can choose other people and commit to other people that way. And yeah, I mean, being a mom is like a mirror to yourself too. Like you just you see so much, you learn so much about yourself. Like you feel like you're doing it wrong a lot, and yeah, I wrote about in my book, like I gave my kids an anonymous parenting survey one time, and I asked them like how I was doing in the 5 different love languages, and one of my daughters gave me a 1 for quality time, and and it was like really insightful, you know. But like thankfully my other daughters gave me mostly 4s and 5s, but and I'd ask them like, what's the thing that annoys you most about that I do that annoys you most? And one of my daughters said it was like putting the eggshells back in the carton after you crack them was like the worst thing she could think of. I was like, okay, I'm doing all right. But like, but yeah, it's constantly learning, and honestly, it's really like the biggest thing that will keep you from being selfish, right? Which I keep talking about. And I think God uses our kids to teach us selflessness, and that's like, yeah, the most important thing.
All right, I think that may be a good place to end. I'm going to come up and say thank you. After we leave, Sarah will be back in the narthex, the lobby, if you'd like to visit with her. Typically, we would be partnering with a bookseller, and you could purchase her book, and then she could inscribe it. Unfortunately, it's not coming out until April. So instead, I'll just encourage you, keep an eye on it. I assume it's available where all books are sold.
Yeah.
It's called For the Love of the Grind. So keep an eye out for that and buy it, and buy it for friends. Thank you for coming out tonight. If you're here in the house, thank you for those of you who have joined us online. And Sarah, we are so glad that you were here to share your wonderful story. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a little gift of a granite plaque that says, with thanks to Sara Hall for bringing faith to life. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.